Hey everybody, Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully everyone's doing well and having a good week. It's crazy to believe that we're already through just about through the first week of 2024. Just seems like it's already picking up here as far as just the pace of the year already. And to think that the weather is going to be picking up along with what feels like the pace already as well. It's going to be kind of crazy. That being said, as we get into the video, don't be afraid to hit that like button. In fact, if you would, that'd be awesome. Also, if you're new around here, consider subscribing and also hit that share button too. So, before we really get into the video here, I made a post about 12 hours ago, and this was picking up on the day 6 slight risk that we ended up picking up on this morning before I left for work. I didn't have the time to make a video, unfortunately, because my editing software takes forever to export files. Anyone that's into the computer lingo, you know what it is. But that being said, day 6 slight risk, not something you see very often, especially not during this time of year. So for there to be a day 6 slight risk in general, usually there's pretty sufficient confidence here. And if we actually go over to the next screen over, I actually kind of indicated what I was seeing here. It's an upper level cyclone and the severe threat that correlates along with it. So we're going to be talking about that. Of course, we're going to be talking about the wintry side of this storm system that's coming up down the line here, which is going to be next week. And then we have a storm system coming in this weekend. So like I said, this is going to be a long one, so buckle your seatbelts. So we'll start out by going over to the Weather Prediction Center and the National Weather Service Storm Prediction Center. And you can actually see now on Friday and Saturday, we have marginal risk in effect as well. So we'll go over those as well, but the 2 days of interest really aren't going to be until the 8th and the 9th. This is our day 5 slight risk and our aforementioned day 6. So we'll start with that, and then we'll look at the wintry precipitation. So, oops, that's not quite what I wanted to do there. Clicked the wrong thing there. I apologize, guys. But here are our marginal risk, and it's not really any surprise. I've been calling for this for a little bit here. I think that this is going to be a relatively limited, very isolated severe threat. But we could, of course, get an isolated wind gust or maybe even a quick spin-up tornado off the Gulf Coast this weekend. Would not surprise me in the slightest. Really think the better chance is going to be more so on Friday than it will be tomorrow. But then again, we know how the weather likes to play, so don't let your guard down, even if it's just a marginal risk. Marginal risk, I've seen plenty of marginal risk overperform in the past. And in fact, last year there were several examples that I could think of. So main thing to do is keep an eye on it there. And then ironically, just like the day 6 slight risk, day 3 slight risk includes a lot of Florida, a little bit less of southern Georgia and parts of Alabama here. But the fact of the matter is, if you're from Jacksonville over to Tallahassee all the way down through the peninsula, keep an eye out for the weather on Saturday as well. We may actually cover the wintry side of this system here on live stream. I'm not sure how that's going to look, but be ready to hopefully you're looking forward to that. We'll give it a shot. But that being said here, let's go ahead and go to days 5 and day 6. So a thing to make note of here is our day 5 slight risk. We've already kind of hashed on this. It's from that same upper level cyclone. And the thing to make note of here is really I'm seeing a little bit more of a push to the west here. Not to say that there won't be severe weather areas further off to the east here, but I'm starting to see a little bit more of a push towards east central Texas now, and a lot more Louisiana as well. We can still see a little bit of a northward ascent too. That wouldn't surprise me as well, given the current parameters that we've seen on models here. But wouldn't even rule out Jackson at this point. Right now, you're currently not in that 15% area, but couple little small tweaks within the models here, a couple small changes, so to speak, and you guys could be right on the cusp of it, if not being in the 15% area. And on day 6, here's the area that we aforementioned before. This includes Savannah, Georgia. We have Dothan, Alabama in there. We have a large part of the Florida Panhandle, and of course the peninsula as well in that 15% area. For all these days, the main threats seem to be mostly damaging winds and tornadoes. Of course, the 15% areas, we have a much better chance of there being tornadoes and high winds. I do see potential, however, on day 5, especially off towards the west, the potential for hail to exist as well. We'll kind of get into that a little bit more as time goes on, as we can get more clarity on the specific risk factors or hazards. But in the meantime, it doesn't really matter which hazard. You definitely want to be paying attention, whether it's through the YouTube channel like mine or through the National Weather Service, Storm Prediction Center, etc. That being said, let's go ahead and switch over and look at the wintry side of things, where we see our current storm system right now, or where it will be by tomorrow morning. High probability of snow over here, starting to get into the Texas and Oklahoma borders here, or panhandles, I should say. And then out towards western Kansas, we're starting to see that high probability of snow accumulating greater than 1 inch now. And then as we continue to go forward, we'll start to see those probabilities not only increase, but move off to the east as well. These probabilities in the pink here are 80% probabilities, and this is looking at Friday night sneaking into Saturday morning. So as that storm system strengthens and starts to deepen, bringing in more cold air, we're going to see the threat for snow shift further and further off to the east. Now keep in mind with the way that our models are usually set up here, the closer you are to an event, the higher confidence you tend to have. Once you get a little bit further out, once you get towards 48 to 72 hours out, the confidence will sometimes drop. But one thing that I'm making note of here is the signal that we get here over towards southern Pennsylvania and parts of Maryland. We have a pretty strong look here, maybe getting into the 85-90% chance for an inch or more of snow. And keep in mind, like I said, this is Saturday night. So as we continue to go here into Sunday morning, the fact that we're seeing a signal this early on, almost 72 hours out, essentially, and seeing almost 100% confidence is it's a testament to just how much potential that this wintry system actually has. So, like I said, could actually be a pretty big storm over here towards the northeast. At one point, it wasn't looking as impressive, but the chances, the chance of this system being much bigger than what we previously anticipated is definitely going up on this end, at least. So, like I said, we'll go ahead and get into the model data here now. We'll start out with the Euro, of course. We already pretty much know what our storm systems are going to be. It's pretty easy to identify them just based off the trough alone. But you can see here's the first system right here. That low kind of broadens out, and then as it pushes towards the east, as we get into Friday night and Saturday morning, it kind of deepens a little bit as it starts to push off to the north and east a little bit. But it will have served its purpose by that point, bringing in that extra cold air, and with that, chance of wintry precipitation will be on the rise. And then here comes our follow-up storm system right here. This one is probably going to be a big one on both the severe side and the wintry side. And there's some signals that I see here in particular that lead me to believe that severe weather is likely at this point. You kind of got that ski jump look across the board here, but I think the timing of these storms is going to be more so later into Monday night and into Tuesday. This definitely has the look of a nocturnal event based on that large scale extent is going to be kind of confined a bit. So one thing that we'll be looking at in particular really is going to be mostly a linear mode of storms from the looks of it. This storm system has that negative tilt orientation to it. However, it does seem like it's slightly on the neutral end of things as well. It's kind of like a hybrid, if you will, so to speak. But with this low deepening as it is right here too, look at how the contour lines are actually starting to really tighten up here and also increase in number as time goes on. This is really just showing how strong this storm actually could be if this scenario plays out. With us being in range of both of these models, my confidence has increased slightly. And then look at the negative tilt that we end up seeing as we continue to go into the middle of next week here. Like I said, this is a pretty alarming signal. This could be a huge storm if this does verify. But like I said, we still have a long ways to go. By the middle of by about 1 week from now, during this time, this storm system's out of here, and then we'll be looking at another trough coming in, and then another big storm system set up to come into play behind that. So we can make that comparison with the GFS. For the most part, in the early part of this run, it's going to be pretty congruent. Here's the first system here, and then as that clears out, here's the second one. Keep in mind the timing might be a little bit different, as well as the trough axis orientation here. Definitely seeing at what looks to be more of a neutral tilt, and eventually we do shift into that negative tilt. Timing is a little bit different though. I do think that we could see storms earlier in the day if the GFS scenario plays out. And then on top of that, looks like we do still end up seeing a linear mode, but it will be earlier in the day on Tuesday. So like I said, a lot to keep track of here, a lot of changes here. GFS also has this as a stronger storm, and it looks like it's moving about the same pace, maybe a little bit faster. And then another thing to make note of is the storm system to follow that one does have a slightly different look to it as well. And then from that point, we start to see some ridging coming into play, and maybe towards the second half of the month we may start to see a little bit calmer weather here. But how long will that last? That's going to be the key question here. I still think cold air will be dominant by this point though. So this is us looking at the upper levels. Here's the mid to upper levels, the atmosphere. We're looking a little bit lower. And the thing to make note of here, we'll put the loop on for the Euro this time, is that we see both our storm systems looking pretty stout at this point. My question is really this storm system at the end of the run here. Just what exactly is going to come of that? Because it looks like it's pretty stout in its own right, and it has plenty of cold air to go with it. But it just doesn't seem like it's as well organized as these last two systems. It seems very broad. But it could, that in itself could also be a pretty big troublemaker too. So we go over to the GFS. We'll go ahead and set that one up. We'll switch back over to the right here. Pause this. That way your eyes aren't dancing around like mine are. And we'll go ahead and put this in loop. And as you can see, second storm system looks insane. And then after that point, that's when business really starts to pick up here. Well, that loop failed, so we're going to try to do this manually and hope that it works. I don't know what's going on here and why my computer is acting the way that it does. But as we continue to go forward here, we do have a storm system like we aforementioned with the Euro that's coming into play here. GFS actually has this looking a little bit better. But the thing is, though, like I said, there's still a lot of uncertainty with this one. So, like I said, we're going to have to watch that one and take what I say with this storm system with a grain of salt. But this broad trough here does look like it could still become a problem. We do eventually see this try to get it to act together here. And with that would come some massive cold air here. If this tightens up, if this system tightens up a bit, though, we could see another system with a dual threat type scenario with severe weather and most likely winter weather. I lean mostly towards winter weather right now, but to say that severe weather isn't off the table entirely would be kind of foolhardy, especially further off to the south. Then after that point, we're really struggling here. We see that this looks like it's going to be spreading a lot of cold air further to the north. Down south, it looks like we're kind of going to be above, maybe slightly above average based off what I'm seeing. It's kind of hard to really get a great read on it with the computer lagging, but it does look like some ridging eventually does take effect here. We talked about this on a video a couple nights earlier, but as we continue to drag this forward, it looks like the trend for some ridging towards the second half of the month continues. So hopefully we can get this to work properly. There we go, kind of. But as a whole here, we just have to really get through the first half of the month. The first half of the month is what seems to get my attention the most here. Now, maybe towards the 20th, we might have a storm system coming in, but look at this. We're 378 hours out, almost 16 days out. Not going to put a lot of merit into this at this point. I can only look at one operational model with this. There's a few ensembles that go out to this range, but beyond that point, really not a whole lot I can work with here. So with that being said, we will go ahead and move over to the height anomalies here. Now here's how we can verify whether or not this will really end up bringing a lot of cold air towards the back half of the run. So at this point, we're kind of looking a little bit more towards the end of these runs, because we kind of know what's the situation with these upcoming storm systems here, the first two at least. But after that point, like I said, it does look like there's a lot of cold air. Some really cold air might be in store from the 13th, which would be next week, or next weekend, the weekend after this one, I guess you could say. And it looks like for a time mainly going to be around the northwest and west central plains here. It's probably going to be having some significant cold here. And then as we go further along with the GFS, we'll start out seeing the same thing. And then as we continue to draw forward here, we'll see that same cold air mass coming into play here. Some really frigid air comes into play. In fact, GFS looks a lot colder actually. But the track seems pretty consistent across the board. A lot more activity, more so to the north. And then here's that ridging that I was talking about coming into play. But it does look like, at least from this perspective here on GFS, we're going to see a storm system and a trough come in and kick all of this ridging out. But it'll be interesting to see just what kind of temperatures we could get before we get to the 20th. Now again, keep in mind, 16 days out is a really long time. Literally within 6 hours, this run could look, this look here could be entirely different. So, like I said, take it with a grain of salt, but since we're looking at both of these models at their maximum runtime, we're going to just go ahead and look at everything right now, because I almost assure you these will look entirely different within the next couple of days for sure. I'd be very surprised if they didn't. So I guess on to the next thing here. We'll look at the temperature, mainly in the short term at this point. So we'll probably go about up to 120 hours on both of these runs and go from that point. But if we look at temperatures, like I said, it's not really a surprise. It's been cold across the board here. But the thing to make note of, for one, our severe weather area. So this is Friday. We get some pretty decent surface temperatures. We're getting up to about maybe 66 degrees over here towards Louisiana. Towards Florida, we're struggling to get up to 60. So the surface heating just isn't really there. But as we go towards Saturday, it looks a little bit impressive. And it looks impressive more so towards the morning and maybe overnight hours here. So we'll have to watch how this trends. And then as we go through the day on Saturday here, temperatures actually look pretty impressive here. But really, it's going to be forcing that's going to be the key with that one. I just don't think there's going to be enough large-scale ascent to really get things going here. It's going to be rather limited, I think. But within any of that, within any of those areas within that marginal risk, I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple severe reports out of that right now. So we go towards Monday. Here's that next storm system rolling in here. And here, and like I said, what really catches my attention is mainly going to be over towards the eastern Texas coast here, right around Houston and all those regions here. If we look at a sounding here, we can actually see that there's some pretty good numbers for severe weather. Instability looks impressive, but some things that I've noticed here that kind of look a little bit limiting is the temperature going up beyond, let's say, the lower levels into the mid levels. It doesn't look super impressive right now. This isn't a tornado sounding either, though. We do need to keep that in mind. And then mid-level lapse rates seem like they're pretty steep, though, so threat for hail definitely seems to exist with this as well. In fact, there's a few significant hail analogs too to go with it. But like I said, that's just one of many things to keep in mind here. as we go towards the 8th and into the 9th. So I think this is going to be a big catalyst behind our setup on the 8th and into the 9th. Even into the overnight hours in some areas over here towards, let's say, New Orleans and maybe even towards Biloxi and Mobile, we're still getting some areas that are popping up into the 60s and then still warming as that storm system's rolling in out ahead of the front. So that collision of air masses here also gives me a slight bit of reassurance that we have a chance of severe weather. Now keep in mind there's other environmental factors that will come into play, but some things to make note of here as well. Look at the surface temperatures on Tuesday around Florida. That's kind of alarming, seeing those 70s there. So we'll have to be watching that really close for the threat of severe weather. And then right behind that, all of that, here comes that cold air, and it comes in full force. So we're starting to see those below freezing temperatures coming into, let's say, the Appalachians here, and then dumping it really far to the south. Maybe even Florida might get into the action a little bit here. Keep in mind we're 168 hours out, so can't put too much merit into that. And we ended up going above 120. Oops. But we'll probably just stretch it all the way out to next week then on this model as well. But pretty much a similar deal starting out here. Now, one of the key things with GFS and the Euro is the fact that GFS sometimes will be a little bit more aggressive with certain aspects of a weather system, temperature, surface dew points in particular. With the GFS, usually you'll see a little bit more aggression out of this model here. And it looks like for the most part they're pretty congruent here. Timing is about the same, which is actually good news. So you can put a little bit of confidence into the forecast until tomorrow. We'll see what happens with that. Because like I said, these runs can change pretty often. So as we continue to funnel in that cold air right behind this system, and then onward we go from that point. So the main days that we're going to be looking at for severe weather are really going to be from this tomorrow evening, I should say, and then onward from that point. Just trying to make sure I can get the time frame in here for you guys so you can see. This is heading into tomorrow evening, into tomorrow night, into the overnight hours. Really, it's more so the Florida Panhandle that gets a decent moisture return. Large scale ascent and a lack of moisture return is going to be an inhibitor for Friday. Saturday might be a little different. I think there could be a small chance, and I'm not saying that this is a guarantee, but with these moisture values, these dew points being as high as they are, I wouldn't be surprised if there may be a small corridor of a slight risk that ends up being issued. The question still will kind of be where. I would kind of lean a little bit further up north than anything else, but not to say that the central peninsula of Florida or even the southern peninsula can't get some action either. But this is just going off of what I've been seeing on the model data here. Now here's our next storm system. We've been talking about the moisture return with this one. Plenty of ample moisture by the time we get into Monday afternoon next week. And then as we continue to go on here, look at the contrast here. We have 62-degree dew points here, very moist environment, and then right behind that, it's almost like a dry line does try to form here, or it's trying to develop, but the sharp contrast is definitely there. We go from 62-degree dew points all the way to 32-degree dew points, even 21 degrees further back. So, like I said, it seems like there's going to be some good lift with these storms at the very least. They could very well become elevated. But with that high shear environment that we have at the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere, which I'm sure is going to translate relatively well down to the lower levels, we could have some trouble on our hands here. So we'll need to be extra watchful. Like I said, fail parameters also exist with this as well. We'll get into that more as we get further in range as time goes on. We're still 100 hours out. So then as we go towards the 9th, we see those moisture returns ramp back up once again. And by the time we get towards Tuesday morning, look at how far north those 60-degree dew points have pushed. Even getting some 70-degree dew points into the action here across the southern peninsula of Florida. So it could be an early morning, mid-morning type severe event possibly. So we'll have to keep an eye on this region as well. And by the time we get into the afternoon, the moisture return even makes it all the way up towards Atlanta, Georgia. Goes through a large portion of South Carolina. Columbia's in there as well. And then as we continue to go forward, we'll eventually see that system roll out, and onward we go into the next one. So I'm interested to see what the 12th ends up doing there. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. And then as we go towards GFS, this is where I'm a little bit more concerned, because the GFS often is very aggressive with moisture returns. So like I said, confidence will definitely increase more with the GFS if it looks a little bit similar to the Euro here. And no surprise here, seeing that the GFS has slightly richer dew points here as we head towards the 5th into the 6th. Timing is about similar, even though this is a slightly newer run. And then as we go towards the 8th, this is where I kind of get more concerned. Dew points look a lot more impressive here. We're getting into the mid 60s. And then as we continue to go forward, we got the mid 60-degree dew points even heading into the parts of the deep south here. We're starting to get out of Florida. Florida's still getting those 60 and 70-degree dew points, but this could make for a slightly more widespread event if this ends up playing out. So this is 120 hours out. We'll see that next system go. And then the next moisture return comes in right behind that. So like I said, pattern looks like it's going to definitely be taking a more active turn as we continue to go on here. So expect to see more videos for sure. So I guess the next thing we'll do here is we'll go ahead and take a look at the lightning flash density here. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens after the 10th. We're going to run this to full here, and we'll go on from that point. So I got the screen going wrong, but of course here is the 5th and the 6th, mainly going to be orientated towards the Gulf Coast and then eventually over towards Florida. Then after that, here is our next system. The lightning flash density is looking really impressive here as we go towards Monday afternoon, where we could potentially see up to maybe 10 flashes a day. So that's pretty high confidence. That gives a pretty good reason to believe that there's going to be some stronger thunderstorms here. As we go later into the day, this will be into Monday night, Tuesday. We're starting to see Louisiana get into the picture here. So we go towards Monday night into Tuesday morning. We're starting to see the Florida Panhandle, and then eventually Peninsula gets into play as we go later into the evening. And then here is where I'm kind of interested to see what happens with the next system here. I think large scale ascent again might be a little bit of a problem with this system, but even then we still see some indicators of thunderstorm activity over here towards this region on the evening of the 12th here. Kind of fizzles out, then we see Florida get back into the action briefly, and then from that point it's kind of a mystery as to what happens next. So last things we'll do here is we'll go ahead and take a look at what our precipitation could look like on both our models here. We'll start with the Euro, of course, and we'll kind of continue it from the GFS from that point. So another big topic that I've seen here is the potential for southern snow. As far as the Euro is concerned, south kind of gets stifled, here, stiffed, so to speak. But the northeast, however, oh boy, this system we've been talking about, we talked about it last night actually, definitely has that nor'easter look to it. So areas like Philly, New York, Boston, you need to be ready for this one. This is the time to prepare, because over the course of the next couple of days, those stores are going to be kind of hectic here. It's not the worst thing you've seen before, but definitely something that if you aren't prepared for it, it could become a real bother. And then towards the back side of this, we do see some moisture kicking in, so we do have to watch the interior northeast for some wraparound snow. How significant that will be is still questionable. As we go towards the 8th here, here's our severe weather. And then as we go beyond that point here, this kind of has the look of maybe being a big Great Lake event. But we do see some moisture on the tail end coming into play towards the Great Lakes, towards Erie and Ontario. Maybe we could see something in the interior northeast towards the Adirondacks, but it's pretty questionable right now still as to where this low is going to end up going. It's a pretty stout upper level cyclone too. 969 millibars, a pretty low pressure. You see that with some stronger hurricanes most of the time here. And then as we continue to go forward, here's our next system. Starting to take more of that track away from the northeast here, kind of leaning more towards the northern states here, the upper echelons of the Midwest here. Then our next system behind that, pretty much doing a rinse and repeat there. We go to the GFS, we'll start out with a pretty similar look. System number 1, big time northeast event. System number 2, our severe weather maker. Now keep in mind, the track of the low is going to still be the key here, but this does trend a little bit further to the south here. So what needs to be kept note of here, maybe the Ohio Valley, possibly. Like I said, it's not a high chance, but something to watch over here if you're towards the Ohio Valley, maybe even towards Detroit, some other areas. I do think lake effect is still going to be a big thing as well. And as we continue to go forward, here come our next couple systems. Not really looking that impressed until we get towards the 12th, but pretty much a rinse and repeat of the Euro here, but could be some big time snow towards, let's say, Minnesota, Iowa, and others. Also a really strong storm system here. You see some category 1, category 2 hurricanes are at this type of pressure. So these upper to mid-level cyclones are really looking impressive right now. And then from that point onward, eventually we do start to see some warming up begin to occur here, and the weather as a result with that ridging is going to calm down a little bit, albeit cold air is still going to persist. It's not going to be like we're going to jump into spring out of nowhere. It's just we're going to see slightly warmer temperatures, maybe a few degrees above average at best. So all we can do is just kind of keep an eye on things from that point, because this is going to be probably an ever-evolving situation. That being said, no, this was a long one. If you toughed it out till the end, big thanks to you. Appreciate you a bunch. But I'm going to call this one, and I'll have probably another one for you tomorrow, because I'm pretty sure things will change once again. So looking forward to seeing you guys there, seeing you guys in the streams to come, because there's probably going to be one coming soon. But that being said, it's been Metalhead Weatherman. You guys take care, have a good night, horns up, and I'll see you next time.